like just going to ask you all, like, how are you doing for real? Like, you have been up, down, and just where are you at emotionally and mentally?
I think after a very long period, I feel very enthusiastic about things at present. Like it has been very overwhelming and draining for the longest period of time. I hate winters. Like I just call it the winter depression is over. I think that's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, for the listeners out there, if you could, like, tell us your life story and like who you are and what do you do?
And what your journey has been like.
This is like I have to summarize 30 years of my life.
In 30 seconds.
Not
No,
30
take
seconds,
your
like, take as much time as you need. We just want to,
But let's pick sections of life. I think that will be easy for me to answer. Like you want to know more
like,
about.
for
Go.
conversation sake, like, let's just give a gist of like who you are and what do you do, and how did you get there to what you do right now?
Sounds good. So I'm a musician. If you've not heard my music, please do plug in straight up. I'm shameless like that. But yes, I'm a musician. I'm a music educator turned product manager, partnerships manager. So I wear multiple hats when it comes to my career. And I think I'll also keep that in focus because that's one part I feel it's not spoken enough because especially when people reach out to queer folks, it's just about, oh, how did you transition? Was your family accepting? Like we have nothing else going on in our lives. Like it's a part of it and it's a very big part of it. But yeah, I started off playing music at a very early age. I had some great teachers in the beginning who supported me, probably were not as qualified to teach me what I want. Like we had music teachers and I wanted to get into Western music. But sorry, very enthusiastic. So it's like you know how Indian education system is. Like as you're growing up, your parents are like nahi pad lo abhi nahi ab din mein nahi sona. Like as you keep growing up, that transitions come happening that you have to join tuitions and stuff. So like with every passing year, like since like I think 6th or 7th grade, there was one thing I had to let go of to accommodate something else academically. But by the time I graduated, like from 12th, music was the only thing that was left. Like I was into sports, I used to go for debating, I would do poetry, basically anything that would keep me out of class. I've never been the perfect student. So like just take me wherever. I just don't want to sit in the classroom. And
What school did you study in?
so I was in the school called St. Mark's in Delhi, and then I switched schools in grade 11th, and then I was in Tagore International in Vasant Vihar. They are actually the first school in India to have a queer club within a school.
Oh,
So that was not there at my time,
yeah.
but it's still progress.
That
Like
happened, yeah.
they're very active. They go for pride parades, so that's amazing. Like the teachers take the students to the pride parade, so that's great. But yeah, by the time I finished school, I was only left with music, and like I was very certain that I want to pursue this further. And my parents were like, okay, just do like an undergrad, and then you do whatever you want to do. Like because they could not see how this could lead to a stable
Right.
career. And in India at that time, music business also wasn't like a thing, and so everyone just knew two parts of music, that okay, you become a performer or you get into Bollywood. Like education was also very secondary because they were only hobby classes, so no one was sure like how would someone sustain themselves like that. So while I was doing my undergrad, I was like, okay, I'm going to pass, but that's it. Like you're not going to ask me for anything else anymore academically. So just did a lot of competitions, met people. I think you're saying something, but I can't hear you.
No. You did your undergrad in something non-music.
Yeah, I did my bachelor's in commerce. I did BCom honors.
Uh,
Yeah, it
and
was fun. I liked it, but it was never something like even for 2 seconds I had in my mind that I'm going to pursue further in life. So I was very focused. In my final year, I applied to Berklee College of Music for two reasons. I wanted to leave India and, of course, to pursue music further. And I think as queer people, this thought always crosses our mind, Kash, there is a way to get out of India. Like most people feel that way. So I was very sorted. Like since a kid, I used to save up money कि नहीं एक दिन तो घर से भागना ही पड़ेगा. So Yeah, and then I went to US, studied music, stayed there for a couple of years, worked as an educator and performer, moved back with that kind of experience because I had not only just learnt music in that technical theoretical sense, but also taught in very structured ways. So that was a definite advantage once I came back. And then the easiest path was to continue teaching because I'd been doing it even before going to MI, which is Musicians Institute. And like I started my own music school. It's called Crescendo in 2012. So we're almost 11 years now. And I was teaching since then. So I was like, okay, let's continue this. Let's keep performing because it also gives me the flexibility. I have always been online classes since I moved to LA. So way before pandemic and Zoom. We used to have Skype and we used to
Yeah,
take
that time.
classes with that at that time.
Yeah. So
So go for it.
yeah, like thank you for giving that that thorough journey line. What I was interested in, like, how did you actually get into the music? Like, what was the? Do you remember that first instance? Was it a situation? Was it a person that introduced you to that? Was it some movie, or like what got you into
My
it?
my understanding of music was limited to जो गाने बज रहे हैं टीवी में. How comes this whole world of music open up to you?
वही होता है like that's what my mother tells me. I don't remember. I was like 6 months old, so I couldn't walk, I couldn't even stand. But like at that time VCRs was still a very new concept in
Right.
India. So
Hmm.
my father had got that and he somehow got his hands on the Thriller entire album by Michael Jackson.
Ooh.
So he used to play that. Like till date, that's the only English music he listens to. The Michael Jackson, that's the only artist he knows. And I used to start dancing and like hopping and jumping to Thriller, and it's one of my favorite songs till date.
Yeah.
So I keep telling my parents that was your cue. Like, why did you wait for so long? But even after that, like my uncle got me a toy keyboard, and I was very into it. But of course, parents are like, "Acha, toys hi to hai ye." And I used to play around.
Yeah.
Then I think it was in 1998, 99, I think 99. My sister got like that 40, 41, 42 keyboard because she stood first in her class, my older sibling. And she learned like that basic Pardesi, Pardesi Jana Nahi happy like for
Happy
about
birthday
a
to
month.
you.
Yeah, and then she's like, okay, I'm done with this. And she put us, before that, she wouldn't even let me touch the instrument. And then it was just on the side because she was bored of it. So I finally, like, it was a hands down. And I would just, like, whatever I had seen and heard her play by ear, I started playing it by myself. And then that was like because I'd already seen what her finger movement was. And like, I knew the melody, everybody knows Happy Birthday. I still remember it, that movie released, Kaho Na Pyar Hai. So Na Tum Jano Na Hum, that was like very popular. They released that song even before the movie released. And I heard that, and that was the first song I played by myself on the keyboard. So it's been what, 24 years now, 25 years I've been playing music, but like it just kept growing. I always had that interest. Like I was in the school choir. I did a lot of hobby classes to start off with. I think I've had over 15 teachers in Delhi learning different instruments. I learned guitar, I learned drums, I did singing lessons, I was doing keyboard. So I did whatever I could from wherever I could. And like it was always music for me. Like I didn't even know what's the difference between music director, producer, musician. But all I said, मुझे बड़े होके music director बनना है. I had no clue what it is at that time. But yeah,
I do not know till date what exactly they do. But I know it's a
we'll
very
discuss that
big.
later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, speaking of which, I would like to know Jay, that what are the kind of challenges that you face? The vision तो clear है, पता है musician बनना है, but what were the challenges that you faced when you decided that this is exactly what I want to do?
So India में there is Bollywood music, there is classical music, or there is folk or traditional music, like people learn to sing in the Gurudwara or to sing in church and all of that, right? I knew I was brought up listening to Bollywood music and I love it. Like it's
Yeah.
amazing, but didn't see that as a fit once I started to grow up a little more. And that's when like even I had more control and say about okay, where want do I want to go for classes. I could do some research and tell my parents, no, this is the teacher, this is the place I want to go. Before that, it's entirely on the understanding of the parents. So the first challenge was finding the right teacher. Like I just learned for I think 6 week in a nursery school, they used to do hobby lessons over summer break. So it was summer break to summer break. So you had to wait an entire year ka cycle to make it happen.
Yeah.
School mein there was nothing happening. That teacher was amazing and he was like my first mentor. But he could not provide me with what I wanted. So he'll always support me. He'll come and put the mic in front of me, hands down, koi bhi khada hai. I was like, nahi iske aage rakho. But he was not sure how much more he could help me apart from like just being there, letting me practice for hours, reminding me that I should practice, sing like that, do that, whatever little he could in his capacity.
Mm.
Then my second teacher, once I started learning guitar, he was like, "Acha, main aa raha hu." At 45 minutes of the class being completed, he'll finally come in. He'll ask me to teach the rest of the class of bare minimum I knew. And then he'll give me some homework. Acha, ab tu ye karke aa jana, and just send me. So there was no learning that was happening per se. Then grade 10 नहीं अभी नहीं करना है, अभी boards है, अभी पढ़ाई करो. So all of that drama. But so finding that right teacher, that right match, and because I was so sure if I would have started that early, like you see in the West, Justin Bieber got popular when he was 14. You look at Billie
Yeah.
Eilish and all these
Yeah.
new kids, I can call them kids, but yeah, we didn't have that. We didn't have an understanding of the industry per se, and I was completely into Western music from day one when I was learning.
Mm.
And then second, when I realized, okay, I want to go out, there was just that school which had just been set up called Global Music Institute. I'm currently working with them now, but like I started studying under them. So they did a tie-up with Berklee College of Music, which is one of the best colleges for contemporary music in the world. And both the founders, their siblings, they completed their graduation from Berkeley, came to India and started a school. So I was in their first batch, but they'd done a tie-up with Berkeley.
Mm.
So I
Interesting.
learned under them for about 9 months to a year, built my foundation. We spent the initial 3 months with another teacher entirely just to fix my technique because it was completely wrong. So I feel like I lost so many crucial learning years of my life where I could have done so much more. So
Yeah.
that happened. And then, of course, though I did go, but that kind of headspace that now you've done your undergrad, but then you want to do another undergrad or another degree in music in an international country, how will you spend that much of money and time?
Mm.
So that was always a thing. And like as I said before, music business was not a thing in India until like 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
So it was all about that. It was happening globally. There were key players who were dominating the industry.
Mm.
Indie musicians per se did not know how to make a living out of it in India. So they would always have like side gigs. That indie music scene peaked in 90s and it was over by the time our time came. So, like everyone has spent so much time building that culture again, talking about it. What are royalties? How can you place your your songs in movies and ads? How can you tour? How can you do it internationally? What should contracts be like? So, payment cycle till date in the music industries are terrible. Like they'll say 60 days. Like I had this venue I was performing at, I got a residency gig sort of. So, every Sunday I was performing solo, and in between they'll be like, okay, there'll be 2 or 3 band gigs also. So you get an entire deal of 15 shows. And they're like, okay, these are the installments in which we will pay. And they agreed to those terms. They sent that contract. Got the first payment, second payment default by a month. And since I'd seen that cycle, I was like, okay, do not clear this. I've already played 3 shows for free for you beyond that. I am not going to play another show. And then they like completely backed off, canceled the entire contract. हाँ अभी भेज रहे हैं, कल भेज रहे हैं, 6 महीने में हो गए. The entire time left. After 6 months I sent a legal notice. Even after like sending 2 notices, my payment was cleared. And I had the resources that I could do it at that time, that I could put that kind of pressure on them. Most musicians are who played shows before I did, so I'm talking about 2019, they still haven't been paid till date. That's how much they fuck up. So it was very essential to start having these conversations, and that shift started coming from 18, 19. But and it pandemic I think also helped because people were not performing shows, so they were finding alternative ways of making money.
Right.
Yeah.
And they really dived into understanding music as a business and working on it. There were, of course, few acts who knew about it and they had been doing it before those times. but it music business even as a terminology became mainstream after that.
Yeah. It's interesting the plethora of struggles and challenges that you opened as a musician. It was very interesting that you said that how you lost so many years because your technique was not on point. I was also interested in knowing how being a queer or a trans person has affected your aspirations of being a musician. No, I'm sure there's a aspect of being lost years there also. But
Yes.
how has that been a struggle?
So first thing, because I identify as a trans man, it's voice dysphoria.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to be a singer. Everyone and come and I used to sing since I was 4. Like that was my first instrument. But everyone will come and like, oh, you have a beautiful voice, you should sing. And I would just dismiss them because and I didn't even realize it's dysphoria at the time. Like I was just not comfortable in that setting. So and I was still singing irrespective because it kept me out of the classroom, but I never wanted to do it professionally. So that's why even I majored in guitar. I signed up, did 2 years of my course, and then realized, oh no, I want to actually sing. I should have done that instead. But I love guitar and I've been playing it as a kid, so nothing went to waste. But like it went on all the way till 2017, since say 1997. So 20 years just went in that kind of a setting because
Yeah.
I started getting comfortable in my own self, and I was like, okay, this will not change the time I actually can get to that point medically where I'm okay, financially stable, and yada 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 can make it happen. So I'll make the most of it. So that was one thing. I think that was the first thing that struck me as a kid. But when I said, like, initially also when I dived into my career, I knew music is it. So I didn't want to even pursue BCom honors. But then at the same time, the thought process was, I will never be in a setting, in a job where I can be myself. Like people will always keep pinpointing, saying shit, and there are always those where traditional days or your farewell parties and festivals, and that's an instant trigger. So like I was very sure कि अच्छा ये तो करना ही नहीं है. At least if I'm a musician, I can do my own thing. मतलब फिर तो मेरे हिसाब से मेरे टाइम पे चीज चल रही है. I can wear whatever I want. So
Yeah.
that was the headspace.
Yeah.
But then they would be like, oh, we are looking for female fronted bands or female artists. What they mean, as soon as they mention the gender, is not the vocal range. All they mean is, oh, they want a showpiece on the
Right.
stage so that people can come and ogle and do their thing. They actually did not care about how they are as a performer. They entertain people who are going to spend. That was the business reasoning. That is the world we live in, right?
Yeah.
And I was not going to give into that. I was like, I'm not going to wear a fucking dress and go on stage and just do that. So
Yeah.
that became very difficult because you had to pick out specific venues who are okay with it, who will get to it, or will pay you enough for those shows. Because then they're like, oh, you're not, ऑडियंस नहीं रह रही है इतनी देर के लिए, हम इतना पैसा नहीं दे सकते, इतना ही मिलेगा. सो दैट थिंग वाज ऑलवेज देयर.
It's
मूविंग टू, सॉरी.
yeah, it's very, I mean, very untalked of how as a queer or a trans person having all these struggles, कितने options limited हो जाते हैं, बाकी तुम्हें इसी pool में सब choose करना पड़ेगा. Like we say pilot, like I have talking to a friend, he wanted to be a pilot, but just the thought of it was, dismissed completely right from the start. Someone wanted to be in defense, वो dismiss हो जाता है पूरी तरीके से. Being a musician, you have to have very certain, very limited avenues, how you're saying. So it's
एग्जैक्टली.
sad, but I don't know. That's the reality of it.
Also not much talked about. I think everyone just likes to know from the outside, oh, how it feels, like how you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. Like everyone just wants to know you're transitioning, or how your
Yeah,
family took it, but nobody talks about all these, the deaths, the small small deaths you have to go through because you're just not being authentic to yourself, and it just feels unfair.
yeah. No, that's true, and I agree. Like it's not talked about enough because there are not enough musicians even reaching that point where they want to pursue it. Like you'll find a lot of people. I was even speaking to Sakshi of late from Gezi, like the founder, and she's like, "Oh, do you know any artists in Bangalore?" And I was like, "Me."
Yeah, that's all.
But then she's like, okay, do you know anybody else? And it's like, that is so weird. I do not know any other queer musician in Bangalore. For me, when as soon as you say a musician, that is a me problem, but I associate them to someone who has original music. They don't necessarily have to have like their entire set list of where they're only singing originals, but at least have that one song they have written, because that's when you're truly, to me, being a musician. That is not true. You music and you're still an amazing musician, and you are a musician, you're equally valid.
Yeah.
But that is my definition. And if you talk about cover artists also, there are so many. They'll say, oh, I sing, oh, I play the uke, oh, I do this, I do that, but you won't see them on stage because they didn't want to pursue it as a career. They understood the challenges, whether they were traditional or because they were queer or trans or non-binary. But it was another layer that they did not continue and they did not pursue it at all. And like, I was making a list the other day of queer musicians who have original music, and I literally have a handful. Like, I've been asking people, if either of you probably would have even seen on my Instagram, where I was like, if you know someone, tell me. And there were only those top 15, 20 names. They are all in like various different backgrounds. So you don't even get that cohesive list of, okay, there are so many musicians you can put even in a festival without like having different kinds of acts.
Hopefully, someone sees this and reaches out to you.
Yeah.
More and more musicians out there who are still not comfortable in their skin to come out and be
I
comfortable.
really do. I really hope more and more people come out, because, like, even if you look at options like Satrangi Mela, we've
Hmm.
attended those in Bangalore,
Yeah.
or Queer Made. Like, so many acts last year when Queer Made happened, at least I was told, oh, you can perform all your originals. So that's what I did. And I was very happy that I had a space like that. But I knew other acts who were doing cover music. And of course, people engage a lot more also with like
Cover.
music of other artists because that's familiar. But imagine if we had our own queer musicians with their music and people were celebrating that they knew each and every song that they're singing along.
The vision is to have a queer music festival.
Yes, why not? We have it in
Yeah.
literally all the West countries where it has been legalized for years. We should have it in India.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Lead the path, Jay.
So, let's say, our listeners or audience, there are queers and allies out there who want to, or who might want to pursue the same career as you, and, just go down the same path and, let's say, become a musician. Like, what piece of advice would you give them to, undertake that journey?
What is the path that they should take? Someone who's really, confused about, अच्छा पता है musician बनना, but I don't know where to start with or what to begin with.
Like, what sort of
So I
resources,
think
what sort of
to
like,
start off with, the clarity is required that you will probably not become the next Taylor Swift. You can still make money, you can still survive, you can make a life out of it. There are multiple avenues. Musician or being in music industry is not equal to being a performing artist of that level or extent. You build your community, you build your independent acts, you play cover shows, you play at weddings, you get into music law, you get into music journalism. There are so many independent labels,
Mm.
and every single thing that exists in a traditional role, that you're in a marketing position, you're a finance person, you can do it in a music company. You have Spotify, you have Apple Music, and these are the ones, these are only streaming. They are web platforms, they are people behind the scenes, they are audio recording companies, they are tech companies. So even if you're traditionally following a path that, oh, I went into BCom honors and I did continue that, and now I want to get a marketing job, I can do marketing within the music industry. Like, I'm still a part of it, and I'm not just a performer. If you really want to be a performer, which is fair, because probably that's the first reason, like, you were into learning music at all, and you're not just an avid listener or interested in the industry, till the time you feel that, okay, you're playing enough shows which are paying you, always have a second or a third gig. But that's, I think, at this time where we are, it's irrespective of the industry you are in, you should always have a side gig. You never know when you will lose your job. You will never know how much time gap will be there, or when the next layoffs will happen. So just always have a side gig and find ways to make the side gig your main gig. That's the only way to be independent.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned all of these other avenues. Like, what are, could you highlight some of these? Like, if not a main performing musician on stage, if not Taylor Swift, what are the kinds of paths that they can take? If they're still a music, someone who produces music and not necessarily wants to be in a marketing or a finance or companies in these roles in music industries, but still want to do something around music, what are the avenues that they can look out for?
So they want to do something around performing music,
Perform.
like music
Yeah,
performance as a
creating
thing.
music of any form, just
Yeah.
dealing with music every day.
So these big acts, they have musicians who are playing with them. There are people who are singing backing vocals. They need assistants who are helping them in general. People who, like, have you heard of Kamakshi Khanna?
Not,
She's
no.
an independent artist, not from the community, but the recent album Pratiko had released, she did the vocal arrangement for it. There are, so basically there are other voices you hear, like, well, there is one melody which you hear, but there is a lot going on, and
Hmm.
that has to be structured. So
Yeah.
that's one thing people can do. Then you can teach. Teach is still always closest to performance because you can teach performing music. Of course, you need to have experience in that first. Always don't just start teaching for the sake of it. But that's one thing you can go into. They have their entire bands, the bigger musicians, even the smaller musicians. You can play with other artists. You can even become a combined act.
Hmm.
You can write music. You can become a songwriter, even if you're writing it for other people. All these bigger artists don't always write their own songs.
Yeah.
There are very few who actually do.
Right. Right.
So these are just a few examples. There are so many options. And by writing music, it's also not always about writing lyrics. Let me also clarify on that. There are top liners which are basically they make the melody. So if I'm singing something right now, I don't even have the words. If I'm going ta ta ra ra ta ta ra pa pa ra pa, if it someone feels okay, that's the hook and that's a very good melody. That's all they'll take. They'll give it to the artist. Okay, this is the melody. This is the lyric. Now you have to just sing it. But
Hmm.
that's what happens even if you're doing like other gigs. Now, coming on the other side of more commercial things, you can sing in movies, you can sing for ad films, you can sing for short films. I have done multiple ad films in the side,
Hmm.
and I'm never even given a recording before.
Hmm.
Right, that oh listen to this, it's usually like अच्छा स्टूडियो आजा, ये ऐसा है, ये सुन ले एक बारी, ये हमने डेमो रिकॉर्ड किया था, चल रिकॉर्ड करते हैं. So I have to instantly work it out, look at the lyrics, understand the melody, then do my own thing. So like I have like half an hour, 1 hour ka buffer usually to
Hmm.
get that done. So
Hmm.
there are multiple avenues you can get into.
Hmm. So, is music school like expensive? If someone, the challenges of being a queer, financial constraints hote hain, there are always challenges of this. So what are the unconventional routes that you can suggest? They can take, the kind of hurdles that they have, maybe financial, maybe emotionally they are not ready, when they're not ready with their voice, dysphoria hai, इतने सारे challenges है. What are the unconventional routes? Or yeah, it is always कि music school जाके ही you become a musician.
So I believe in technical learning. Reason because I have lost years. मेरे हाथ में problem हो गई थी कि मुझे याद है like I had a putty on my hand and someone else was writing my exams because my technique was wrong from playing guitars for the last 5 years. And this is the only reason I am against YouTube learning.
Hmm.
Because वो आपको सही बात बता रहे हैं, राइट? आप बैठे, आप देख रहे हो, आप कर रहे हो, दे आर टेलिंग द एग्जैक्ट सेम थिंग, बट you probably missed it or you did not understand it. They will not be able to correct you. You always need a guide, right?
Hmm.
We are living in a world where there is so much information. You just have to figure out क्या सही है, put it. अब तो वो भी कर देता है AI आपके लिए. It will tell you that, but it's just about the actual implementation of it. You have to make sure your technique is right, spend time, save money, find a teacher. And there are people who do it on a sliding scale. There are people who do it for hobby. There are other musicians who would like to help out, who have just started. Even beginners, like find students who have just started into, like gotten into the realm of teaching. They'll be on a lower price scale,
Hmm.
right? But invest those initial 4 to 6 months on nailing your technique.
Hmm.
उसके बाद सब है ऑनलाइन. फिर आपको जब लगे अच्छा मैं कंफ्यूज हूँ या मुझे नहीं पता ये कैसे करना चाहिए, I'm stuck here or I want to explore something new, do lessons for a couple of weeks, couple of months, go back, get there. That is the basic outline. अच्छा मेरे पास इतने resources नहीं है या bandwidth नहीं है, whether whatever kind of constraint it is, they can follow this route.
Hmm.
If you have to do it on YouTube, find one person, spend some time and do it sequentially. I am sure there are people who have uploaded it in a sequential order. I do not know of any channels. I've been wanting to do it myself for the longest period of time,
Hmm.
but I'm sure there would be more AI tools also will develop in the near future who would focus on this order.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, were you able to get the last part? Both just please.
No, no, you can repeat that. We'll get that part.
What was I saying? I was like, I'm sure AI will also come into play where it will help you understand in a sequential order what the right ways is.
Right.
People are working on those things already.
Wow.
But in the meantime, find hacks you
Hmm.
get around. And if you can, please learn. Go to a school, go to someone, even if it's a one-on-one teacher, do it at your own pace. That is okay, but learn under someone at least for 3 to 4 years.
Right, right.
If you have to, like, restart your career, and like if you have a chance to do something differently, like you mentioned about that hand injury you had because of not playing, not knowing the right technique, like you can take any instance and just like if you have to redo it, like what would you do differently?
I would network differently. And I'll also tell you why. Because if I think about technique or starting early, we do not have those resources in our country. Right? So it is not in my individual capacity to change it. कि मैं वापस जाके बोलूं कि अरे मुझे पैदा ही कहीं और करते.
या पैदा
That is,
किसी और की तरह कर दे.
फिर तो बहुत चीजें हैं ठीक करने के लिए.
हाँ.
This was in my hand. There's dysphoria, there are other things into play. You are always cautious irrespective of where you're coming from, the industry. Like I still remember one of my very close friends, Mehek, we would go to a venue and like we'll just observe and the person will come and she's good looking, people will come, people will approach her, and I was like, oh, I own this place, oh, I schedule gigs here, I'll push her to jana mere pitch me. I will not directly have that conversation. I would not connect with people. There are so many musicians. Like I said, Kamakshi, there's Abhilasha. Everyone is doing brilliantly right now. I love their music. They were all my batchmates. We were all from the same circuit. They're all still connected. They all know of me. There's a difference,
What was
right?
the highlight of your career so far, Jay?
Definitely Loop Lapeta. Like that has given, I think, mainstream fame in some way. Like at least people in the community were aware, people outside the community were aware was something like this can happen. So that put me in that spotlight for a bit.
Would
So
you
that
would you
was
like to share that story? How did Loop Lapeta happen?
so I was playing a show in Bombay, and like I used to travel a lot more pre-pandemic for shows and stuff.
Yeah.
And that same friend I was talking about introduced me to this person called Siddhant Mango, who's a lyricist, and like they work in a duo
Wow.
called Siddhant, Mago and Mayank. Mayank is the producer, the more musical instrumental guy, melody, lyrics, Mago writes.
Hmm.
So she introduced me to Siddhant, and she was like, "You guys should connect. You should do something." And he's like, "Oh, I'm going into the studio tomorrow. You should come." But there was not enough time, so it didn't work out. So I think this was 2017. And then 2 years later, again, that thing happened. We connected on Facebook, so we were in touch. So he saw I'm playing the show. So he just hit me a book, can you put me on the guest list? And then he loved my performance, asked me to come to the studio the next day. He's like, अच्छा ये गा दे, अच्छा वो जो कल ऐसे गाया था ये ऐसे गा दे, अच्छा ये वाला गाना इस फील में गा दे. And I have no idea why I'm singing all this shit.
Hmm.
And then he's like, नहीं मैं बस samples रख रहा हूँ so that like next time if I want to see whose voice or like this texture will fit somewhere, then I can do that. Then that entire thing happened, and the company, like there's a studio called there's this production house called Chrome Music Production, Chrome Productions in Bombay, and they're like, oh, we want to sign you. So I was like, "अच्छा, ठीक है, let's process this information." Did a lot of
ज़्यादा
back
ही अच्छा हो गया एक साथ.
Yeah, so it was that being at the right place at the right time. Like that's how my association with them started. But eventually, we did a couple of ads. We did an ad for Oyo, which apparently got a lot of awards. You guys might have heard it. It's like love a boy, love a girl
Yeah.
peacefully. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was me.
That's
Uh,
good.
Yeah.
Nice.
I found it through, I think, kahin purane. I was searching.
while probably there on the feed, yeah.
Yeah.
So I did that. I did Goa IV board, did Shalimar paints, did a lot of that shit. And then he was like, "अरे एक movie आई है." It was their first movie also. We recorded 3 tracks for it, and then pandemic happened, so the date kept pushing on. They changed producers. The movie is still not released. Hopefully, it will release this year. We don't even know if the music will be used or not because they changed the music director, producer, everything entirely. So I don't think they'll be using the songs. But you never know. There's always hope.
Yeah.
But then that flopped 2-3 weeks before pandemic hit India. He was like, अच्छा शाम को स्टूडियो आजा काम के बाद. मैंने ठीक है. Like ये song है, ये दूसरी movie है, ये try करना है. So we sang the demo. We'll send it to them. If they like it, they'll let us know. We did 2 tracks, and the second track got bounced entirely. Like they did not use it, though we wanted to release it independently. I personally love that track. And लूप लपेटा देव लाइक अच्छा पैंडेमिक हो गया मूवी ही बंद हो गया किसी को नहीं पता कब रिकॉर्डिंग होगी कब शूटिंग होगी so towards August of 21 then they were like अच्छा they really want to get like a mainstream singer but I'm pushing तो एक बार ही ढंग से एक और बार रिकॉर्ड करके भेज दे so now I'm in Bangalore at that time I was in Delhi and recorded it here, sent it, they liked it, and then it was finally released. It was still under my dead name because it started before I had socially transitioned. So they did not know that this is how I identify. Mayank and Siddhant did because I told them. But the rest of the team had no idea, like entire cast of the movie. And then once they saw article, the BuzzFeed article is how the cast and everyone in like in Paul Duplapeta got to know that okay, we have a trans artist who is like trans man who's a musician, and they're like, okay, let's also play on that card. But I think that was the story behind it.
Amazing.
So, like from your experience, lived experience of, like throughout the journey that you've had, and you must have had seen other people's experiences, whether, they are the individuals of the community or outside. And, there are people out there who can't come out because maybe of their environment, maybe because they're not ready yet, maybe they don't feel it. So like what kind of message you would like to send it out there that maybe it gets better, maybe you're like people who have already come out, they are working on creating an environment of inclusion and representation, just so people identify and they feel comforted with that. And like follow up to that, like you must have had people who are allies, and people who want to be better allies. So like what piece of advice you would like to give to them so that they can be more sensitized and more understanding of people around them?
So for other people who are probably not out or still figuring out, take one day at a time. Don't rush into things. I get messages every now and then. Array, I think I am this. How will I get to know? What can I do to do this? Everyone has their own journey. Everyone has their own way of figuring out. It is not a quiz कि मैंने 10 questions दिए अगर आपके 9 out of 10 आया तो you identify as so and so. Apparently the apps were doing this also now, but
Yeah.
it's a spectrum. You fit in somewhere. If you don't know yet, you will know eventually. Just make sure to listen to yourself and take one day at a time. It's okay to feel someone or something one day and not feel like that 5 days after or even 5 months after or 5 years after. So no one is going to be like, अरे तुमने पहले तो ये बोला था, अब तुम ये कैसे हो सकते हो? We understand, you grow, you learn things, and there are people who will say that. You need to learn to ignore them and listen to yourself. So that's for the fellow queers. For allies, listen. You want to ask questions, you want to know. There are so many voices. Their entire responsibility that it is on the queer community to educate us is incorrect.
Yeah.
We understand it, we will do our part. But you can't just Google simple things, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can't be like, अरे I knew you, तो I thought मैं तुमसे पूछ लूं. भैया Google कर लो.
Yeah.
तुम
You
एक
also
बार
know
की
Google. You also know Google.
Exactly.
And
And
it's
if
sort
you're not
of
sure,
there's
it's
sort of entitlement when they ask questions also,
Okay,
right?
we are trying to be better, na, by
yeah,
asking.
that is
Please
it.
don't want me to be better.
And I know people do that. Like I also remember, like when I was at MI, someone who was trying to get into MI, they called me, was like, "Do you think I should go to this college?" मैंने मुझे तेरा पूरा नाम नहीं पता, मैं कैसे बताऊँ if you should go to this college? Like I
Mm.
don't know what your background is, I don't know what your goals are. It is a good college, but is it a good college for you? It's the same thing as asking people, "अरे तुम बताओ." You can do some homework, do some research. You have questions after that. Oh,
Yeah.
I read this, I saw this, I think this is my perspective. What do you think?
Hmm.
That's a better way to approach it. So read, do your homework, listen to what the person is saying. Like even if you want to have an argument or you're asking a question, you have to be sensitive enough of how to frame it. They are always like, अरे हम पूछते हैं तो तुम लोग इतना डिफेंसिव हो जाते हो क्योंकि जिंदगी भर we have guarded
Yeah.
ourselves.
That's what.
So it is your responsibility to tone it down, to keep it down, have a proper conversation.
Right. How do you deal with all of this, or does it still trigger you when
I
people?
block them out. It obviously in that minute it triggers. Like even if I'm going to a restaurant and someone will misgender me, I am instantly triggered. I'll either walk off from that place. Like usually, like I'm out with my partner and she'll see it. Like, do you want to go? And then she'll know that I'll completely stop that conversation. Like I'll let her take over. Like I won't even interact.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot of times. So yes, in that minute, you of course instantly get triggered.
Yeah.
But I love to live in my bubble. I am a pure Pisces. If you are into
Oh, what a
horoscopes,
sign. What a
so,
sign, me too.
so it's just about the people I trust, people I know. Even if someone is coming in, I just like it's that vibe how someone is approaching to you. If I feel okay, this is someone I can have a conversation with, I will continue. Like was no, like I just ignore. I've reached that point. I don't have bandwidth. I'm old.
That's the part with external struggle, externally trigger, or whatever the things that you are facing internally. How are you dealing with that? Voice dysphoria, yeah, anything that keeps
So
you up.
it has become better. It has become way better. Of course, there are things that trigger me, and it's like if you have anxiety, that okay, if you know it's your trigger, you tend to avoid it. So it's the same thing because it is causing anxiety. So it's like you tend to avoid it, and I know it's delusional. It is just pressing those buttons and letting it be for a while. But I honestly don't know a better way of managing it. I know there are ways to help. There, if you can afford, if your body is ready, you can medically transition. You need to have a backing, which I very strongly believe that you need to have someone in your life who will be there throughout because there'll be so many changes you will go through.
That's that's true.
So, and it's sorry,
No, 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 continue. Sorry.
I think it doesn't have to be a partner necessarily. It could be a friend, it could be a family member. You need that support system, is what I meant to say. But yeah, for me, I'm delusional. That's the way I deal with it, to be very honest.
दिल बहलाने के लिए ख्याल अच्छा है.
Huh.
But I'm sure, like, I have seen you perform, I've seen your confidence. A lot of people want that. So, delusion is best. People who are.
No, you'll also see that kind of confidence comes out in queer spaces because then I can be myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
There's no.
I know if it's a safe place. I know I can be myself. So if I am in a setting where they're mostly cis people, I know people who would misgender me, there are days I'll fight it back. I'll say things. I'll not let it like affect me. But there are also days it affects me tremendously.
Mhm.
And then you're like, oh, I don't want to do anything today. And that is okay. You can give your mind and your body the time to heal because there's years and years of trauma. It's not going to go overnight.
Yeah, that's so.
Very interesting point you brought out because when you talked about the years lost and everything, I was just thinking like what kind of motivates you whenever you had the bad day or like the worst day where you just don't want to do anything, and like the next day maybe you have a concert or you have some commitment, like what pushes you to like keep yourself going, and then how do you take care of your mental health and give yourself that self care that you deserve and that you need.
आपने टॉक्सिक इंडियन फैमिली कल्चर के बारे में तो सुना ही होगा. We
बिल्कुल.
we've
Sahabi.
all we've all grown up in that setting. Most of us where you do not learn how to communicate and you throw yourself in work. So that is my exit point. Like if I start feeling anxious, even if I'm like having a fight with my partner at home and I want to withdraw, I'll just start cleaning the house, even if it's nothing to clean, or I'll just throw myself into work. That's the most focused. Even between a fight, I will instantly be like, "Arey, ye to-do list hai," because that's my mechanism of exiting my mind from that situation.
Hmm.
Yeah, I leave the chat basically.
Mhm.
So, I sorry, what was the question? I got derailed for a
What
second.
motivates you to continue doing
So
what you're doing?
it's not motivation, it's basically me uh getting to these part of things. So if I know, if I have a show, if I know I have a commitment that I need to fulfill, I will be happy because then I will get out of bed and I can stop thinking about those things,
Okay.
which is not the way to do things, people. If you're watching,
You're not
I am,
subscribed to this.
I am fixing that. I'm working on it. That's why J in process.
Yeah, that's
That's so sweet to hear that.
yeah, Jane process. That's your handle, right?
Yes.
Jane process. Always a work in progress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not just about your transition, it's your everyday journey. Like things you liked 2 months ago, you probably don't like now. Like I can't stand mushrooms anymore. So,
Oh, that was intense. So let's have some fun with rapid fire. Yeah,
let's do that.
without hampers, there's no hamper. Maybe
Arey,
we'll
yeah.
just come up
Once
and
we
cheer.
scale up or something like that.
We'll cheer loudest for you in your concerts. That's your hamper for now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. What would be the title of your book?
Jane process.
Jane process. Interesting. What is the one superpower you wish you had?
To know what's going on in somebody's brain, like what they're thinking.
But wouldn't
Uh,
that be counterintuitive to the anxious person?
Yeah, but then I already know who to ask to fuck off, no?
Oh,
पहले ही पता है, मतलब उनको फोन करने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी, इनसे दूर ही रहो.
yeah.
The last album that you heard on a loop and loved.
I had this Tame Impala album. I am
Hmm.
Impala. Why I'm also pronouncing the name wrong, but it's a proper noun, so
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. Very
But
good songs.
very late to the party. But it was a 2015 album. I'm completely blanking out on the name, but yeah, loved it.
What is your favorite song that is written by you and performed by you?
Come Home. That was my first. So first ones are always special.
Yeah. If you could have dinner with anybody dead or alive, who would it be?
Michael Jackson.
Hey,
Hey.
we're coming to
Full
full
circle.
circle.
Yes,
You'd go and
Yeah.
thank you for it. Tomorrow is a
that's
music.
the plan.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Thank you so much, Jay. That was fun. We had a lovely chat. I am sure this will be helpful to a lot of folks out there who are aiming to be in the field that you are. One last question before before I let you go. If you had the attention of the whole world for 1 minute, what would you like to say to them? Queer, allies, otherwise, anyone.
Let people be themselves.
Might drop again. Thank you so much. We'll link all your handles so that people can reach out, get in touch,
Thank
follow your
you.
work, your amazing work. Come to your shows. I heard there's an India tour coming up in the Pride month.
Figuring out it's entirely on people. If they want it, it will happen. If they say नहीं हम नहीं आ पाएंगे तो मैं शो पे जाके क्या करूँ?
सबको लेकर आएंगे सबको लेकर. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I hope you had fun and thank
I
you so
did.
much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was wonderful. And like you both are amazing and it's a great thing that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye bye.
Bye.